Welcome to this informative webinar, Small Grants for Conservation of Neotropical Shorebirds 2026. We will have simultaneous interpretation into English and Portuguese. The instructions can be seen in the screen. In the Zoom, you can see three dots or a logo that says interpretation. Click and select the language of your preference. I will speak in Spanish, but there are two interpreters, one for English, one for Portuguese. One minute to start. We have interpretation available for this event. Instructions on the screen. Let us start. Be welcome to this informative seminar. We will be providing information on the small Manomet grants for the conservation of neotropical shorebirds 2026. Instructions on how to prepare quality proposals so that they are selected. This event is organized by Manomet Conservation Sciences. Having said that, and calling these Manomet Small Grants, we should talk about Manomet. Manomet is an NGO, non-governmental organization based in Massachusetts, in the East Coast of the US. Manomet uses science and collaborative approaches to strengthen the migratory flyways of birds, strengthening coastal ecosystems and productive landscapes in the Western Hemisphere. For over 50 years, Manomet has established partnerships with companies, producers, educators to help conserve nature and local communities to thrive. Manomet has been a big player in conservation, namely conservation of shorebirds in the Western Hemisphere. You can visit the web page. And now continuing, Manomet Small Grants are managed by the Executive Office of the Hemispheric Network, housed in Manomet. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the Western for those that do not know what it does. The Hemispheric Network of Reserves for Shorebirds seeks to conserve them by the action in a network of key sites and looks for the key sites to go to effective conservation to maintain healthy habitats for shorebirds to benefit current and future human populations. Manomet started this program, Manomet Small Grants for Conservation of Neotropical Shorebirds, that has measurable benefits for the population of shorebirds. If you want to know better, and then after the presentation, let us hear the presentation, and then you can scan the QR code and visit the page. To find exactly the same information I am going to share. The benefit of being in this event is that we will answer questions. So if you have questions, you can write them in the question and answer box. Manomet Small Funds Program seeks 5 objectives to promote conservation of shorebird species and populations breeding in Latin America and and the Caribbean, what we call neotropics, strengthening knowledge on neotropical shorebirds to inform decision making, contributing to the management of population or key sites, integrate the needs of neotropical shorebirds into other conservation efforts for to preserve biodiversity, to support the designation of Western sites, Western as for the acronym in English, the designation for neotropical species, and finally, to strengthen the capacities of professionals starting their conservation careers in the neotropics area. There are some guidelines, key guidelines, that you should follow to apply for small grants to make sure that your proposals are successful, solid, and maybe selected uh, after the review by the review panel. It's only for individuals. Organizations or institutions cannot submit proposals. Applicants are individuals. The applicant should be part of the team that will conduct the project, and the person responsible, the person that submits a proposal, must be in early career in conservation in the neotropic. What do we mean by early career? No more than 5 years after graduation, or for example, a PhD. That category of early career is independent of age, because we may have individuals that have been accountants and now want to work in conservation. Therefore, they are starting a professional career in conservation, and maybe older, not necessarily young. And the individual must be necessarily a resident or national of a neotropical country. Again, following the guidelines, eh, only proposals with projects to be led in the neotropic are accepted, meaning Latin America and the Caribbean, and only in important sites for shorebirds. In the page with all the information that includes how to apply for the grants, you will find a couple of links related to the sites that are important for shorebirds and have the Western designation that is part of the hemispheric network of reserves for shorebirds. If the sites you want to work in are not included in that list, there is another link that shows sites that might be classified as such. If your site is not in the list, you must give the rationale of why it is of importance, why that site is of importance for shorebirds. Only proposals based in the species and populations that breed in the neotropics, priority is given to species of interest for global or regional conservation. The projects that focus in species or population of shorebirds that only breed in North America, excluding Mexico, are not eligible. But if the project is focused in a population that breeds in the neotropic with a species that also breeds in North America, well, it is eligible. They have this very clear proposals for shorebirds in general are not accepted without identifying focal species as they appear in the web page. Clearly, you must identify the focal species, the species that will be the target of your project in the form, and not simply say shorebirds of the X site. That proposal does not even reach the panel. And the list of species that are accepted, the list of species that breed in Latin America and the Caribbean, eh, are also found in the web page. The projects must respond to threats and needs for conservation of species and population of shorebirds listed in the strategies of flyways and national plans. For the countries that have national shorebirds plan, focus may be research or conservation. Investigation projects must be based on matters of direct relevance for the conservation of the species or the target population. For example, to better understand a factor that limits the population. And priority will not be attached to applications that do not have this approach. Remember to leave your questions in the question and answer box. And the question, if the question is a part of the information we are sharing, it probably will be not be answered. So please focus on things we have not shared. As the picture shows, projects are not done uh, individually. For success projects, or you must be accompanied by others. Therefore, the projects you submit your proposals, both the proposal or the implementation, must be developed in close collaboration with a local conservation agency, with an NGO, with the government, and they are eligible are the projects that may get local commitment that benefit conservation of a species through, for example, environmental education in the local communities, working in local organizations for decision making or land management, for example, in national conservation. But the projects must have a total budget, or the proposals must have a total budget that is small enough so that Manomet funds represent a significant proportion of the total uh, to cover expenses related to the activities of the project, and in case of projects proposed by an individual but facilitated by an organization, that is, the fund is for an individual, but the money is delivered to the country through an organization. It is permitted to include administrative expenses as long as they can be verified. For example, to break down the image, For example, we accept expenses of field work, transportation, food, accommodation, um, um, uh, per diem, insurance, travel insurance, fuel, rental of vehicles, also supplies or laboratory material, for example, the notebooks to take data, pens, the tape to mark the transect, or laboratory supplies. If you do genetic testing, we also accept material for educational activities. For example, if we want to rent a puppet, we accept the renter as long as it is part of the proposal. Or purchasing fabric for educational materials, painting, markers, paper, everything you may need as part of the environmental education. We can cover expenses for the dissemination of workshops, rental of the site, projector, if there are guests that need transportation, the transportation may be covered. Uh, she thinks she's talking too fast. Field work, field equipment, binoculars, telescopes, GPS, compasses, computers, as long uh, trap cameras, as long as they are very well justified in the framework of the project and stating the use of will be given to the equipment. Except expenses for conferences or material for conferences are accepted. That must be well justified within the proposal, and the presentation that is made in the conference or congress meeting must be based on the results of this specific project. So we can admit expenses related to conferences like registration for the conference, the traveling to the conference and fees. For example, the time you use within the project. If you have something like a salary, but not calling salary, or if you need hiring a consultant for a specific aspect of the proposal, that can be included too. Things that are not included pay for beverages, cigarettes, illegal substances, or illegal activities. I will be speaking more slowly. The proposals will be assessed based on three criteria, and then you will see the different criteria. The first criterion is the requirements or guidelines that have just presented. The individual may be early career, the proposal is focused on Latin America and the Caribbean, neotropical area. The individual that submits the application is a resident or national of Latin America and the Caribbean, focused on important sites for shorebirds, focused on the species, neotropical species, that breed in Latin America or the Caribbean. The proposal should have a conservation or investigation focus, and if it has an investigation focus, the investigation results will contribute to conservation or will have an impact on conservation, and that the proposal or project is not implemented uh, to be implemented only by the individual, by the applicant, but there needs to be a network of collaborators. The second criterion, the proposal needs to have an impact on conservation, addressing critical threats for those focal species. The lack of information for a species or is a critical threat. If you will contribute to collecting new data for a species, you are approaching a critical threat. The proposal needs to have benefits for the focus species, needs to be guided, trying and implementing the recommendations, guidelines, or strategies included in the national conservation plans for the countries that do have them, and the strategic frameworks of the strategic hemispheric frameworks for shorebirds, and needs the results must be communicated, and communication of results must be at different scales. If there is a local community you are working with or close to the project, the communication must be given to the local community, to decision makers, to governmental agents. There is different players at different levels, not only maintaining communication of scientific results in conferences, not only for scientists, but broader. And the third criterion is that the proposal needs to be feasible with realistic objectives uh, that are measurable. The methods you are proposing are appropriate for the site, for the species, for the time. They have a realistic budget. That is, the small grant is $3,000. So if you're planning activities, you need to plan activities that are according to the $3,000. If you have funds that complement the $3,000 to be adjusted to that, the proposal needs to have local support, not if you are planning a project without having any local player or without any local player being informed that you are implementing a project. And the proposal needs to show there is commitment to conservation of the site and the species. What does this mean? That you not simply are thinking that this is a specific project in that site, that you go once, implement the project, the fund finishes, and you never go back. You never again think of the species or the site. It's important to show that there is a commitment, a longer term commitment. If you are beneficiaries, if you are awarded a small Manomet grant, several things happen. You receive the money or the resources to implement your ideas, your projects. And also you have the opportunity to receive mentoring from experts in conservation of shorebirds, meaning experts from the executive office of the Hemispheric Reserve, experts of Manomet conservation science, and experts from the broader community of shorebirds. For example, mentoring in community involvement, analysis, statistic analysis. There are others. Also, uh, you may receive training or in development in soft abilities, so soft capabilities, like improving communication skills, leadership skills for conservation, your capabilities to write proposals, to obtain funding. Something we are promoting is the exchange of experiences among awardees or the person that receives a small grant, and also to the extent possible, only when it is possible, when the planets are get aligned, exchanging experiences with other initiatives and other projects. And those that receive a small grant become part of the community of grantees of small grants. A very interesting environment with exchange of experiences and also challenges like solving the challenges, how to learn to fix those challenges, how to apply, and how are results communicated. There is an online form in the three languages. This call works in one in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. And you will have questions when filling the information something I forgot about the form, the sections of the form are limited in characters. Each section will tell you how many characters you can include so that you consider that. As I said, in the forms, when you are completing the proposal, you will have questions. There is a section of frequent questions in the website of Small Grants. Uh, Go to that section first. If you do not find the answer to your question, in the second step, write to the address. The address is housed in the website. And the great news is that the deadline for small Manomet grants has been extended to May 30, 2026. To May the 30th. We will be receiving applications up to the 29th of May, 11:59 p.m. And the results will be announced uh, approximately 2 months after the deadline in the social media and in the web page of Manomet Conservation Sciences and the Western site. I have a few slides, a list of questions that have been frequent in the last 3 years. And well, basically, I am bringing them so that you can see them. And if you already had those questions, well, they will be answered. Much has been asked about requirements. As I said, species of the list of species in the web page of populations of the neotropics, namely Latin America and the Caribbean, and persons that are resident of Latin America and the Caribbean or national, any person without age limit, including students. Maybe the master, PhD students or undergraduate. What is important is that about students is that could be students doing research, but the small grants project should be a project in itself, not part of a major project or a component of a larger project, but a project in itself, where no organizations or institutions may apply. And the site should be important for shorebirds. The duration is 2 years, 24 months uh, without a follow-up. They couldn't be done in isolation. It must be a team and organization institutions that accompany. The projects need to address political threats, and the threats you should know firsthand, and may also refer to threats in the national plans or benefits should be presented to focal species and then communicating the results to different audiences. The budget of these grants is $3,000. That needs to be a significant portion of the total project. Equipment can be purchased if needed for the project, and justified administrative expenses may be included, not covering illegal activities or alcohol or illegal substances. Environmental education activities as a strategy for shorebird conservation are accepted as long as you can demonstrate a direct impact on the conservation of the focal species or populations. Is it possible to apply as a venture? Let us understand what a venture is. A venture understood as a business that generates economic profit. No, you cannot apply. But yes, you can apply if the venture is an innovative idea that adds environmental or value for the conservation of shorebirds without personal economic benefit. What responsibilities do I have after I get a small grant? Well, you need to complete all the activities you proposed when you submit the proposal, then report the expenses in the format that we specify, communicate the results, and of course, of everything, well, you have to sign a contract, and all those obligations are part of the contract. So let us recap. You may submit proposals with two focus, research or conservation. If you submit a research proposal, it must answer to a research question, stating clearly what the research question is. How can I answer it? What methods you will use to respond? How much does it cost to answer? You must need a budget. What help do I need to answer? What type of partners? What type of collaborators you need? Who should I work with? If you submit a conservation proposal, then specify what action you want to implement, and then what threat of that species or for that species it addresses. What do you need to implement? What materials you need? What methods you need? How much? Mm, how much does it cost? And what you need? So now we can go to the questions. I insist, submit the proposal before May the 30th. You can look for the time zones, local time zones. So when the call closes in your country, you have information in the web page. You can scan the QR code, uh, and then so that you can see the proposal, the social media, Manomet, and the Western media are in the screen. And then I will be closing in 30 seconds, and we go to the questions. How did it go? So we have questions. I forgot to say my name. I am Insadora Angarita Martinez. I work for Manomet Conservation Sciences. I am responsible for the Manomet Small Grants for Conservation of Shorebirds. Teresa, how many focal species are required? As many as you want, to which you can target in your project if you can provide investigation or conservation solutions. Anna, can I propose if I am in the last year of the university? Yes, of course you can. You can apply. Something I forgot to say is that there is a section of frequent questions in the web page. Visit that section. If you do not find the answer to your question, please do write to the email in the web page. We are here to answer your question. If the question has been answered in the frequent questions, then we will readdress you to the web page. Alvaro, could you explain the first requirement on early career? I think I explained it. Basically, 5 years from the start of the concluding the PhD program. Anna, as collaborators are only institutions, could be persons with experience. Yes, Anna, could be either institutions or individuals with experience, but it is recommended to have an institution that supports you. Could be an NGO, a research institution, a university, a provincial government, local government, a women's group that are established. Teresa, how many agents and institutions or how many collaborators are permitted? Again, as many as you think may help strengthen and improve the proposal. David Ramirez, can I apply to create a group of community monitoring for shorebirds, even when my site is not part of the network? Yes, but you need to clearly state, describe why, if the site is not part of the network and is not in the list of important sites. There are two lists. One list of sites that are part of the network and the list of important sites. That is, sites that are key for shorebirds but have not yet been designated as network sites. If it is not in any of those lists, you must state, justify why it is important. Projects should last 2 years or less, like 1 year. Yes, they may last less than 2 years. Daniela, is it possible to focus on more than one focal species? Yes, it is possible. Josmel, how many people as the maximum or minimum may be part of the team? It is an individual applying, and the team may be as many people as you need around to implement the project. Maria Angelica Gonzalez, good afternoon. I studied computer IT. I have been working as a volunteer with birds, including shorebirds, and I am interested in scientific conservation. May I apply? I do not understand your targets are related to conservation. The- if your targets in computing are related to conservation, if so, yes, because you do not have a career in conservation. What is important is that in the proposal, you show the aspect I mentioned of commitment with conservation. If you are interested in implementing a project in a special site with a certain species, but it is not only a specific time in your life to work with that species and that site, but that if in your life plan, you plan to continue working with that species and that site, David. I am tourist guide, but I want to go full time to conservation. Uh, that is considered conservation. More questions? Well, if you have more questions, you may go visit the web page and you can see there if they have been answered. If not, you can write to us. Remember, you have up to May the 30th to apply. We want to receive many proposals. We want to support many sites and many shorebirds, most particularly individuals who are enthusiastic in conservation. How do you justify a site of interest? Because it has shorebirds, a significant number of individuals, because it has threats, critical threats that are affecting shorebirds, or there is a community that is interested in conserving the shorebirds. In that side, the number of individual birds are important, or maybe the site houses populations that are of interest for conservation. When we conservationists say of interest for conservation, we mean species with some sort of threat that are threatened globally or at national level. For example, the red lists of threats. I think you can justify in that way. Again, um, if you have more questions, please write to us. Vianney has just included in the chat the list of sites. Estefania, you can start the next season. It's a very good question, Estefania. I did not include it in the presentation. Ideally, the project that start in October 2026, that is, you may start in November, December, but not earlier than October 2026. If you have in mind projects that will start in August 2026, you may write to the email and justify or explain why. Not to the email, but if you can justify in your proposal why it is necessary to start before October 2026. Questions? I can see the list of sites. Ricardo, what is the minimum time for the minimum for the project? The minimum time, no less than 4 to 6 months. If a project needs to analyze laboratory samples and you can do it in 2 months, well, there is a maximum time, couldn't be any longer than 2 years, no more than 24 months. Nicole, can we include material like banners? I think so. Justifying it. If you can obtain discount at national level for being scientific material. If I will have interviews or talk, if I will conduct interviews or talk to the local community as part of the project, do I need, uh, you should have a permit of the communities, yes. That level of ethics and good practices of approaching work with communities. I don't know specifically in your country what is required to have those interviews with the locals of some communities. Some countries require prior consent, signed consent. That depends on each country. But as a minimum, from the ethical aspect, to have the permit, the welcome, the acceptance, and to have the communities informed of why you are doing that. 2 minutes for the last questions, and then we conclude. In my proposal, can I include 2 areas of studies or 2 different neotropical countries? Yes, as long as you focus on shorebirds that breed in Latin America and the Caribbean. And who applies is a national resident of Latin America and the Caribbean, or the Caribbean. Number of questions, great. 1 minute, questions. This is the right time. If there are no more questions, I am very grateful for your time, for having stayed to this time. In some countries, it is late to hear this presentation and making questions. I will be uh, ready to receive applications up to May the 30th, and we will be looking forward to the proposals. Thank you, David. The presentation is being recorded and will be available in the YouTube channel of the Hemisphere Network. Is it mandatory to have a second funding source? No, it is not. Caio, thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here. It's been wonderful to have you. We will be looking forward to receiving proposals.